Okay, so let's get right into it. While we've all been watching the big public AI models, there's this huge shift happening behind the scenes, inside the world's biggest companies. They're totally changing how they use AI, and it's a really big deal for the future of this tech. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why.
To really get how fast things are moving, you have to see this quote. Just back in 2023, you had a CIO at a major insurance company talking about AI like it was, well, a toy, something for the engineers to toy around with. That was the mindset. That was the starting line for pretty much everybody.
And believe me, that toying around phase, it didn't last long. By 2024, a lot of these same companies had their first real AI apps up and running in production. But now, as we head into 2025, the whole picture is changing again. That simple, easy approach is starting to show some serious cracks, and it's forcing a massive rethink across the board.
So let's talk about that first stage of the journey. We can call it the closed model comfort zone. You know, it's the easy, obvious starting point for just about every company. It's the path of least resistance.
But that comfort zone doesn't last. Now we're seeing the cracks in the foundation. That easy path is hitting a wall, and it's exposing this whole idea of a single, perfect, one-size-fits-all model as, well, a myth.
So what's really going on here? What's causing these cracks to appear? Why are companies that were perfectly happy just a year ago now suddenly looking for a different way? Well, the answer is probably not what you're thinking.
In fact, let's just cut right through the noise and bust some of the common myths.
So first off, it's not really about vendor lock-in. Honestly, with OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google all competing, switching between them is pretty straightforward. And at first, it wasn't about cost either. For a while there, the price per token was dropping so fast, everyone thought that problem would just solve itself. And it's definitely not about security, because these companies are running dedicated versions inside their own secure cloud. That's already handled. So if it's not any of those things, what is it? What's really driving the shift? Well, it turns out there are 4 much more subtle but powerful reasons why the top companies are making a change. And here they are. We're talking quality, latency, what's called unit economics, and maybe the biggest one of all, controlling their own destiny. Each one of these points to a huge limitation of that one-size-fits-all approach. Let's dig into them. All right, first up, quality. Look, no enterprise thinks they're going to build a better general model than OpenAI. That's not the goal. But for a super specific task, oh yeah, they absolutely can. Imagine you're a big health plan, and you need to pull very specific codes out of millions of medical records. A generic model kind of struggles with that, but a smaller model that you fine-tuned on your own data, it can be way, way better. That kind of quality is a total game changer. Second, let's talk about latency. The giant frontier models, they're built for handling lots of requests at once. But think about something like a real-time AI voice assistant on a phone call. If there's even a tiny, awkward pause, the whole experience feels broken, right? For that stuff, you don't need a model that's just powerful, you need one that's fast. And that usually means building your own specialized, leaner version. Third, unit economics. This one is a real shocker. So remember how costs were supposed to be going down? Well, then agentic AI came along, and suddenly a single click from a user could fire off, get this, 50 separate calls to the model. 50! All of a sudden, those manageable costs just explode. And that forces companies to go from being a price taker to a price maker by just running the models themselves for cheaper. And that brings us to the final and maybe most profound reason: destiny. This is the big strategic one. Executives are starting to look around the room and ask this exact question. Hang on a second. If our company and all of our competitors are building on the exact same AI, where is our advantage? What is our alpha? They're realizing that to really win, they can't just be creative with the app on top, they have to innovate at the AI level itself. So, for these 4 big reasons, enterprises are making the leap. They're heading into the open frontier, aiming to customize their own models. But this is where the journey gets really, really interesting. Because when you solve one set of problems, you tend to uncover a whole new and frankly much tougher set of challenges. On the surface, the idea seems so simple, doesn't it? Just grab a great open source model, throw some GPUs at it, and boom, production-ready AI. Easy. But the hard reality?
That path is absolutely full of what people on the inside call dragons. These hidden, nasty, complex problems that can totally burn a project to the ground.
Which brings us to our next chapter. Here be dragons. Once a company decides to build this stuff itself, it has to confront all the hidden costs, all the technical monsters lurking in the shadows of AI infrastructure.
So let's meet the 3 biggest dragons that every single team runs into almost immediately: performance, reliability, and scaling. And trust me, slaying these is the difference between a cool science project and a real mission-critical service your business can actually depend on. Slaying the performance dragon isn't just about flipping a switch to go faster. To get that super low latency we talked about, you need deep expertise in really advanced techniques like speculative decoding. And that is a skill set that most companies, well, they just don't have it lying around.
Next up, the reliability dragon.
For any service that actually matters, you need 4 nines. That's 99.99% uptime. Sounds great, but what happens when a GPU inevitably fails? Or the serving software just crashes, which, by the way, happens all the time. How do you guarantee the service stays up without just burning a mountain of cash on backup hardware? It is a wickedly hard problem to solve. And finally, there's the scaling dragon. This is a real-world story from a massive company. When they get a sudden burst of traffic, it can take them 8 full minutes to spin up a new copy of the model to handle the load. 8 minutes. In that time, users are just getting error messages. The app is failing. You just can't have that in production. So after wrestling with these dragons, either by trying and failing, or just by seeing how huge and complex they are up ahead, enterprises get to this critical crossroads. They've seen the limits of the easy, closed model path, and now they've stared into the abyss of how incredibly hard it is to build a custom solution from scratch. And this brings us to the final multi-million-dollar question. The need for custom AI is real, but the path is full of dragons. So what do? Do you build? Do you commit the huge amounts of time, money, and brilliant people to slay these dragons yourself? Or do you buy? Do you find a partner who's already done it for you? This decision right here is what's going to define the next era of enterprise AI.